So
Like, who's watching Eyes Wide Shut really at this day and age right now? Well, maybe a lot of people, because then it made me think, I was like, is this what the Diddy parties were like as well?
maybe so. I was listening to one of the Baldwin brothers was doing a podcast, and he said he claimed that there was effectively two parties. There was like the party and then the after party. And there was a time period where the switch started to happen, and that's when the majority of people either left or were asked to leave, and then the people who wanted to hang around or the people who were supposed to hang around were still there. And that's when more of this kind of stuff occurred.
It's really interesting that the Baldwin, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, he's Justin Bieber's father-in-law.
Okay. I don't remember. I don't know all of which. Maybe it was him. It was just on the Dan Patrick podcast. I
So
just saw it pop up this week, so I
I
watched a
didn't
little
see
bit of it.
that. But if it is him, he probably knows quite a bit.
Potentially,
If
or
Justin's involved.
they're just out there talking to talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, there's this whole world of what goes on there that is outside of the norm.
I mean, what we know for sure is that these parties did happen. Maybe not like the movie, but parties happened.
Well, it definitely didn't happen like the movie because maybe the overall structure of the game plan, but the movie was definitely a rated R version, right? So we know like it was a rated R version, and what was probably occurring was at least triple X and beyond. Like I'm sure there was elevated usage of chemicals and agents and stuff like that as well.
Like we got like the clean version of it.
Yeah.
If you can believe
Right, the
it.
cleanest version you can produce of something like that. Because I also listened to that interview of the gentleman who was arrested at the Trump Hotel back those years ago and claimed all this stuff about what was going on in Hollywood, and in particular with, you know, Mr. Sean, we'll say, and his claims there, and that he was being pumped with this liquid narcotic and these hormones and stuff to make him last longer, and
Okay.
was paid to perform acts on all these different people. So
Yeah. Yeah, because what I just don't understand.
part of the freak offs, I guess, is what he said.
Yeah, because we do know that the freak offs happened. I guess we don't really know that much about what that means.
Yeah,
We just
I don't even care.
Yeah, I mean,
To be
yeah.
honest,
Honestly,
I
like
don't
I
even
don't think
care.
we need to know.
At that, like that kind of stuff, I don't even care. What I care about is that they're involving people, and they're pinning these people against their will, and basically, performing acts and brutalizing these people and messing them up in order to be a part of the society at large, or their group at large. Like, you want a movie deal? Here's what you got to do. You want your record to be produced? Here's what you got to do. And that's the kind of stuff that I have a problem with. If you're going to do that and hold this kind of club and everyone's just going to do that, great. That's
Like if
fine.
everybody's consensual and everything.
Yeah, if you want to do that stuff, I don't care. Go ahead and do that stuff. It's not going to be something I'm a part of, but you want to do it, go ahead. But when you force people into this against their will, and it turns them into these people who are not well mentally adjusted for the rest of their life, and it seems to be the only means by which people can achieve any kind of status in that. That's when it's screwed up. That's when it's like gatekeeping for people who may have more talent or make more interesting films or do stuff like that. I don't like that, because then I feel like not only are you doing horrific things to these people, but also you're depriving all of us of like potential good actors and good movies and good films, right? And that's what drives me nuts. Yeah, because I see some of the stuff that comes out. I'm like, this is straight garbage. And then people are like, oh, Hollywood's not producing anything original or new. It's like, yeah, because people who are able to do that are producing it locally here instead of going and getting gangbanged by a bunch of elephants, right? It's like, what do you want? You want to be a part of this thing, or you could take your chances on YouTube and become famous that way. So people are producing, there's great stuff that people are producing out there just with their cell phones and their buddies. And it's way better than what Hollywood's producing as far as creativity. And, like I watched this simple one today, and it was lawyers watching John, and it was just a simple concept, very funny, but it was supposedly like lawyers watching John Wick and saying like what was legal and what was illegal.
Yeah.
And they're like, just making commentary, watching the film. and it's like blatantly illegal stuff, and they're going, oh yeah, that part's illegal. I know that they're trying to, like, they're showing them when they're shooting at each other in this scene with like silenced pistols. And they're like, I know they're trying to keep it on the down low and stuff, but this is still very illegal. And they're like, oh, he jaywalked there, that's 3 to 4 years. Or he's like, he smashed his head into something. They're like, oh, that's a manslaughter charge. Oh, now it's a murder charge. Like, and just like and that was funny, right? Because
Yeah.
it was ironic or entertaining and very simple, but it was very funny.
Speaking of like human cycles and stuff, I think we're coming to a cycle where we're not putting the emphasis on celebrities that we used to.
False idols.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the
Everything
golden
kind of
calf,
goes back
right?
to that.
So,
But and now everything that I'm reading is that podcasting is like where the future kind of is at. YouTube creators, stuff like authenticity,
yeah.
where it's like that was like the lawyers like authentic, probably what they do on their free time, and they're like, let's put a
just have some fun.
camera,
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think that we're gonna get to a point, and I don't know how we're gonna get to this point. Maybe like the list is gonna get released. Maybe we're just gonna keep moving on towards we just don't care as much anymore.
Well, I think if you tear down those institutions, you'll see more of that. And if you stop playing with these algorithms that intentionally push messages, like that's the problem, is you have a couple of people throwing the switches on top, and then they get their worker crew that just stifles and prevents people's voices going out there. And they do it under the guise of, well, we don't want to put stuff that's not entertaining, and we want to keep people drawn to our site. Well, because then this video that they claim doesn't have value or people don't want to watch goes on another platform, and it makes the platform relevant.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like there's all these smaller platforms that become relevant because of a couple creators, and people literally download those apps just to view those creators.
Well, and then if you go in like the rabbit hole of if it is true that to become X amount famous, you have to do certain acts, it probably drives them crazy that independent creators go against that norm and they have zero control over that. And if you think about it in those terms, that you can do it by yourself, why won't they mess with the algorithm? Because that's how they get their control back.
Yeah. That's how they keep their control, right? And for the people who were involved and potentially blackmailed or whatever with those acts, those people benefit from it. The people who initially put the money up to the startup for the control. I mean, there's this whole system of web of control that comes from that.
And honestly, like, if you think about it too, the people who were getting canceled during 2020 weren't like the famous. It was literally independent creators.
Right.
I swear there's got to be something to that they don't like, that they can't control who rises up. I mean, that's why you see a lot of hate.
You got to control the messenger, control the message, right?
Because if we're going to go down this same rabbit hole of social media is controlled, they like to control who actually rises up and like who, whatever.
Which is blatantly obvious for anyone who created and posted videos. Because you see some of the stuff out there, you're like, how is this being circulated?
And I mean, he can, but then there's that term industry plant, which I 100% believe is a real thing. I know that it is kind of like controversial, that it's a
if you saw
buzzword.
This thing spiraling out of control, would you not give people, with some personality and back them with $250,000 to put together a studio and start putting together content and make them seem like they're the great, and do marketing and advertising for them?
Oh,
and now you have your own. You get to say, oh, this independent journalist who's now, and we saw that. We know for a fact that our own government did that campaign funds for different election cycles were given to independent creators who were literally just given a set of talking points. Like, people exposed the emails, like the keywords they had to say, the sentences they had to say, what the video had to do. And they were producing those videos for like $5 to $10,000. They were being paid. On top of then, not only were they being paid, but it was being circulated by the companies. So like their message then was circulated by the companies, acting if it's some kind of organic eruption of this video, and it was being pushed. Because if you look at the stats on those videos, when you look at the video stats, they make no sense. It's like
No,
yeah.
I know. That's why there are like outliers who break through and have their own messaging. But industry plant might not be like some random person that they find out on the street. Industry plants could be somebody who is working hard. And if you think about it, that would be the best industry plant because they do kind of have the personality already and they're already comfortable in front of a camera.
Right.
You just really pump them up.
Well, it's someone who's morally flexible, but is also good at what they're doing.
I feel like a lot of industry plants fall really fast. Just like they're as quick as their rise was, their fall is just as fast. I don't know. I do know a little bit about the world of reality TV just because of
And how it's completely fake.
past things that I've done. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
confession time.
I've never been on a reality TV show, but I dressed somebody who was.
Dress. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Gotcha. And or was like the costume design, I guess, of somebody who was. And they quite literally just kind of, it's an open casting call pretty much. Well, how the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City got formed, in my understanding, is that they picked one girl who had a connection to another girl, and she basically said, I know these 5 women and they're interesting. But then on the show, they act like they've been best friends for years.
Well, I know too that they're doing that now with politicians. Or I should say, I know that there's discussions now, speculation, that there were open casting calls for certain politicians. People who've become really internet presence and are young, vibrant, that the reason why they went from doing a job that they then became a politician, like they went from doing one job to being a politician, like let's say a paper person, a newspaper person, to all of a sudden they're like this politician in a certain major state, major city, is basically the same thing, that they had an open casting call looking to fill this role with a certain personality type that they could have complete control over. Keeping it as opaque as possible, you can draw whatever conclusions you want to draw. I know people want you to call shots, but I don't want to call shots because I like the idea of just...
You gotta make your own conclusions.
Yeah, like just look into it. Don't take what I'm saying and be like, oh yeah, because I don't want someone to then recite, like if I say something, and I don't want someone just turning around and reciting it verbatim like it's fact. Like, go look and see if it has any legs. If there's any politicians that are out there now that were doing something previously and all of a sudden ended up in a major political position out of nowhere, and there's internet archive postings for a casting call for that district that are viewable online. Go ahead, do the work, do the research, and find out for yourself.
Reality TV isn't actually reality.
Well, that's when you said that. I was going to say, I went to a live taping of Jerry Springer. So
I did not know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they shot like 3 or 4 videos. And one of them was like super sexy lies and secrets or something like that. And they had these, I don't remember if they were topless dancers, but they had dancers in like thongs and like high heels, and they were like dressed up like they were supposed to be secret agents, but like super sexy secret agents.
How were they able to air this on TV?
It was for their DVD series where you'd buy like the rated R version. Like everyone who got up on stage got into a fight and their clothes got torn off. So it was like regular Jerry. From what I remember, it was regular Jerry. It was like white trash trailer bash hour. Then it was super sexy lies and secrets or whatever it was. And then that was like the DVD version they were shooting. And in that one, like everyone got topless at some point, basically. Like everyone's boobs were out. So, but my friend, the girl I was kind of seeing at the time, she was the producer for the show. And actually, after going to see... Yeah.
I was wondering how you ended up at the show.
I always get invited to stuff.
I was like, your life is like so interesting.
I forget, that's the thing is, going through your life, you don't realize what interesting stories you have until you start talking to people about stuff. And then they're like, you did what? And then you realize, oh, I guess that is kind of interesting.
Well, I guess I just figured I would have heard about it by now, that you weren't like this recording.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I have so many I do have a lot of interesting stories.
They'll slowly come out.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. But yeah, so I did go and I was there, and the point I was trying to get to was in the woman who I was talking to at the time, who was a producer for the show. She would use like Craigslist. I think she would use Craigslist.
Use Craigslist?
Yeah, and so they would post things on Craigslist to get people. And it would be things that are unrelated. It would be like people who are looking for like secret lovers, or had the, like they would go to those channels and then pull these people in to the show and pay them to come onto the show. And the people would have these stories, and even if they were totally outlandish and made no sense, they didn't care. They treated it like it was 100% real. So like if they felt the person was completely lying to them, like they just met this person.
Yeah.
They didn't care. They would put them out there on stage. And then, so that's what they would do. A lot of their downtime was recruiting people through these websites to come onto the show. And then when they would have them in the back, they would like say like, oh yeah, Cassandra's like a total slut, right? She was totally like your boyfriend.
Riling them up.
Yeah. They would like pump them up and then get and like, don't you want to tear her hair out and blah, blah, blah. Like that was her job. And then they would set them loose on stage.
That was the girl that you were dating's job?
Well, I wasn't dating. Someone I spent time with. So, but yes, that was her job.
That's hilarious.
Recruiting people online, getting them in the studio, and then having them in the back, and then like riling them up before they went out on stage. Yeah.
Okay, I have so many thoughts. Where was this filmed at?
Oh, that was in Chicago. Yeah.
And I guess like if she ever sees this, we have to be careful, but is a person like that super drama? Because you would have to have a personality that is okay with riling people up.
Yeah. I was incapable of trusting her, if that's what you mean. She was just someone fun to talk to and hang out with, but it was
and then she's like, do you want to come to my job?
Yeah. I mean, it was cool. It was a cool experience, for sure.
I think I'm like laughing so hard about just that thought that is not the type of show that you watch.
No. I mean, I was familiar with Jerry Springer, for sure, because he was so wildly popular.
Well,
probably like years before this. This was towards the tail end of it. Like after the stuff had come out with him and the writing the checks for professionals and stuff. There was a lot of stuff that he got hit with.
I actually don't know whatever even happened to that show. I just know it was super controversial because it was just like fighting the whole hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I knew, this is a less funny one, but I knew a person who was on a season of The Bachelor. And she actually, if you go back, she was the woman who challenged the guy. This was a long time ago. So this was 2005, 2006.
This is like the first season.
It was early. So it was 2006 when I knew her. Because I graduated 05. So I knew her like 06, 07.
Okay.
And she challenged the guy, the Bachelor, to like a push-up contest. So she was someone who got on the show and she like challenged her to a push-up contest. And she told us when she came back, she told us, the trainer she was working with, and then some of the rest of us. So I got some of the stuff that I heard was from the trainer, and some of the stuff was from her talking about it. Okay, mm-hmm. So there's amalgamation of things here. But effectively was like, it's staged. They, in the beginning when they show the limousine pull up and then the women get out, what they do is they do a shot of the limousine pulling up, and then they have you get in one door and then crawl across and get out the other door. And that's how they do that scene. So like the women aren't being dropped off.
They're not actually in the limo.
No, they sit in the limo for like 2 seconds. So she said they would line them all up.
Yeah.
They would shoot a scene where the limo pulled up. Then they'd say, okay, Jessica, your turn. And they'd go in the driver's side, and then they would scooch across, and then they'd open up the door and come out the passenger side, and they'd shoot that scene, right? And then they said she would be sitting down with the producers, and they were there for such a short period of time. I think she only did like, she was one of the first people eliminated. She was eliminated early. And she said like, the producers would have you in there and they would just be talking about the contestant, like, oh, like his jawline is so perfect and his eyes glisten, and like, he's like the most kind, caring, hearted person. And they would just have these like sessions where they would just sit you down and pump the person up to you and make you think like you're in love. Like, wouldn't he be the best fit for you because you like this and he's great at that and blah, blah, blah. And she said by the time that she left there, she was convinced that she was like falling in love with this guy. But she spent very little time interacting with them at all.
That's why none of them ever last, because it's like the amount of time that they've spent with each other is probably the equivalent of like a week.
Yeah. And then they also give you things. She said like the push-up thing, it wasn't her. They like give you stuff to do.
That makes sense. I do know the first night when they get out of the limo, they make the women stay up literally all night with hardly any food and just a lot of alcohol.
Yeah, that was another thing. She said they did stuff to like get them kind of like, oh, she said like they get you delirious, loopy, like tired and excited. They were like they did a really good job of like manipulating people's emotions to like get them in the right state for when they would do the shoots. And then when the guy would arrive, they would tease it so much and make it like this big thing that when the guy arrived, they were all like, oh, like it was finally party time and like things could happen. So they would do that to get him in that like frenzied state.
Did she make it far?
No, as I said, she got eliminated earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She was nice, attractive, had a good job. She had been someone who was really heavy and then got into exercise and lost a bunch of weight and changed her body significantly and then wanted to compete actually in like bodybuilding shows.
Honestly, she was probably better off. The people who are going far on that show usually are just in it for the fame, which, I mean, that's a great way to get people to know your name. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. They all come out with huge Instagram followings.
I'll do the elderly bachelor one time.
You're not in your 80s.
I'll be like the 70-year-old bachelor, silver bachelor.
I think you're a millennial.
Yeah, that's true.
You're not even a Gen X. That is wild, though.
Technically. In my heart. Yeah. Well, we were talking about Eyes Wide Shut.
I know.
Sorry.
This will probably be too different, but I will say, though, I think our formula is movies. I think that we tried books, and I'm still down to read the books. Okay. But I think movies can happen a lot faster.
Yeah. We'll have to start watching some conspiratorial movies then.
But
I wonder if there's self-help movies. I don't know. Yeah, they're out there. You know, that's what I was going to do for this was watch other people's YouTube breakdowns because I'm not going to go through, like I said, I don't want to do something. I just want to have conversation about stuff.
Speculation.
Yeah. I'd rather be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like, I think that defines me pretty well. Like, I'd like to be able to dabble in everything and not be so honed into something to where I want to be an expert. Like, I didn't want to walk in here and be like, oh, at the 12-minute 59 marker, when you see the flash of this, that relates to this in the Roman Empire and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I find that fascinating to watch, but that's not who I am.
You pause it. You're like, it's time for me.
And there's people who do awesome videos. Like, I know for a fact we could jump on YouTube or different social channels and find amazing breakdowns of Eyes Wide Shut. But that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is just talk about it as a cultural piece, as the influence piece, like what I took away from it, watching it again, knowing, or at least being influenced now by the revelations we've seen, in particular with Hollywood, the allegations of trafficking, sex trafficking, involving minors, involving hidden passageways and rituals and rites that are being speculated about. And if this movie was indeed a nod to that or not.
So I think that it definitely has to be some sort of nod. Somebody in Hollywood knows something about the symbolism going on.
All right, I know I want to make opaque statements, but that was pretty broad and opaque. Yeah, I agree with you. There's probably somebody who knows something that could be going on. Hear it here first. You know that somebody knows something that could potentially be happening in Hollywood.
The only thing that I'm like wondering is if we're going down like the alleged rabbit hole that like maybe this is like life imitating art or whatever, where it's just these parties could potentially in some capacity happen. It's been making me wonder if those games that you watch on Squid Games in some capacity is actually happening and we just have absolutely no idea. Because it's just...
Well, I mean, you've heard of the hunting grounds, right? There's... Like, have you not seen the movie that was released fairly recently with the wealthy individuals putting the poor individuals in cages and then dropping them off in a field with weapons and then hunting them with weapons? Yeah. So that's like, that movie is talking about like a dark web story that's been circulated for a very long time, that there's a particular area owned by a well-rumored family that this human hunting grounds that occur there. There's multiple movies that have been created about hunting people like for sport.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's nothing new. Yeah, that's nothing new.
How did I miss that?
Oh, there's so much of it. So much of that one. It's actually really good. There's that one that came out, and then there's the one about the woman on the wedding night. You saw that where the family that owned the huge mansion that made a pact with a demon, effectively, and had that game, that deck of cards, and they'd have to play the different game to keep their status. And it turned out they had to make the sacrificial of the bride, and so they played that. Hide and go seek basically with her, and she ended up taking out the whole family. If you wanted to do whatever you could, you had these traditions. Like all right, so I always look back and say, okay, what's humans' capability? And we know that we have done some horrendous things throughout history, and we know that there's single individuals who have done some horrendous things, right? We know that there is like a Jack the Ripper, and we know there's a Ted Bundy, and we know that there's a Jeffrey Dahmer. Well, imagine if you had a Jeffrey Dahmer personality who had unlimited funds. Honestly. What could they do? And what would they then expect their family to do to stay in that circle? And could that then breed this type of scenario?
That is true, because every serial unaliver that we know of doesn't really come from wealthy means. There might be some out there, but most everybody.
And why is that? Think about how the world works. We've talked a ton of time about how you make small legal infractions and you end up in jail, but people steal tens of millions of dollars and have nothing happen to them, or just have their reputation besmirched. So if we've learned anything, it's that if you're well connected and well financed enough, there's clearly multiple layers to our legal system. How much time you spend in jail depends on how much asset and wealth and value you have. There is never a serial individual that they're poor and it's because of that, or they're a trucker and they drive interstate. No, those are the ones who were caught because they didn't have the finances and they didn't have the means to avoid being caught, being prosecuted. We know for a fact there are people who owned islands that did tons of illegal activity that it took multiple decades to catch them after they were known to be doing that and to be prosecuted. We know, for instance, Mr. Epstein was arraigned and arrested in Florida and then continued his activity after being arraigned and arrested in Florida for those very same things. So it's like, to say that, I would find it to be inaccurate. I would say that it's most likely that those individuals do exist and they've been doing their thing, but they don't pay the same penance that a guy who works at the local grocery store, right? Because the access, the means, the lawyers, the ability to cover that stuff up, if you have that much money, like money changes people, money changes what they do.
100%.
Power, I guess not even power, but not even money, but power, influence.
And like money gives you power.
In that movie, Eyes Wide Shut, right? We just watched it, where it was like, these are major players. If you even knew their name, you wouldn't be comfortable. He just moves on with his life, right? So whoever, if there was foul play there, they completely got away with that. That's exactly what the movie was showing you.
And then the title alone, like Eyes Wide Shut, we always hear like time and time again, allegedly, that if these acts are going on, they do put it right in front of your face, like right in front of your eyes, I guess, but you have to be aware of what it even is.
So if you go down the rabbit holes, is that these traditions, these things, you don't want to be disrespectful of it. If you're participating in these things, you have to pledge your allegiance to it. You have to show your allegiance. But it's not up to you to explain to the pores what this symbol means or what these words mean. I was thinking about randomly today, someone said understand on the radio. And I've listened to a few times where I've seen people do breakdowns of words and where they come from, in particular with like water and maritime law and talking about currency and talking about these different things. But it made me kind of look at the words that you have. And the word understand. And all of a sudden I was sitting in the car and I was like, the word understand, like, it was like in a rap song, to stand dirty but not understand, something like that. They said something along those lines. And I was like, did the word understand originate from, not from you saying that you know what the person's talking about, but you acknowledging that you're accepting what they're telling you, meaning like you are to be literally standing under someone, you're acknowledging their position of power above you. Like, was that something that was cast out as a word from king to the people that lived in his village, that you will go and give me these crops? Do you understand? And they're like, yes, I understand. Literally meaning I'm standing below you and accepting your dominance of me, not meaning I conceptually I conceptually know what you're talking about. And so I was like, because that's such a weird word when you think about it, understand. When you take the actual word and you break down its two areas, being under and standing, like standing meaning like physically standing or where you're located, right?
Yeah.
People talk about my standing with them isn't so good, meaning like they don't think highly of you. So it's like, and then you take under and stand and standing. It's like, oh, if someone has understanding, that means they're just, does that mean that word originated from you conceding that the person has authority over you? Is that what it meant? And then over time, it just became, oh, I understand.
Yeah.
Like from someone telling you something, it was originally like giving, oh, you're the boss. To where over time, from that happening so often, it just became, oh, understand just means like you know what they're talking about.
I really thought about it like that, but that is really interesting.
I just had that weird thought pop into my head.
epiphany.
Yeah, I had that weird thought pop into my head when I was driving the car, and it just seemed to be super clear to me. Like, so then I started to wonder about all these different words that we've adopted over throughout time, and where they originated from, and versus how we're using them now.
Every word has that.
Right. To where like multiple words mean the same concept, but then I started to wonder, like, do they really? Did we just start to lump them together because we broadened our language and our vocabulary? Or did they, if you go to the origin of the word, was it really a completely different concept from what you're using now? And I see people do that with like slang words and stuff now. So it makes sense that 1,000 years ago or whatever, when you said understand, you were pledging allegiance to someone. Understood, understand. Like it was the same as like pledging allegiance versus saying that you conceptually acknowledge what they're talking about or you agree with it or something like that.
Now we use it just so casually.
That was my point. And then there's so much power in words, right? The words that you choose and the words that you say. And so I think a couple of years back, maybe even more, I had watched a video. I like to go on those deep dive things. I can't help it. And I had watched a video where someone was talking about spelling, using the word spelling and spells in relation to spells and writing spells and creating spells and creating text that were creating spells, creating reality and all this kind of stuff. It got back to the idea of spelling and putting people under a spell by writing a story, creating the reality, creating these things. And then I started to wonder then about these particular words, like how important is it in the vocabulary and the words that you're using? Are you using words that are putting you in a certain mindset, in a certain category? Does that really make a difference? I don't know. And then you start to look at, like when you talk about legal documents, how they're written significantly different than the way we converse typically. How you look at different social society groups and the words and terminologies they use and avoid. Is that due to ignorance or is that due to an understanding of the power of those words? But that all came to me like, I mean, over time I've had these thoughts, but that for some reason when I was driving today just hit me. And I started to really kind of question like, oh man, how important is our vocabulary?
They say like words is one of the most powerful weapons that we have, honestly. And
we've seen it.
I think that there's a lot more to it than what we just think it is. Because when you went into the whole spell and spelling thing, I don't know why I got stuck on that, but I really did. Because it's just like, there probably is. I have always heard when you write something down, there is a power to that.
Yeah.
I can't.
I mean, every self-help thing tells you that.
Exactly. And maybe that's where I've heard it from. But I mean, they do say there is like a power to physically writing something down. And I don't know if it's just like putting out to the universe what your intentions are.
Manifesting
or
it. I mean, yeah, you look at everything from The Secret to like Tony Baloney's like self-help guide. Everyone's got like writing down and making lists and doing these things that they always attribute to being a huge part of their success.
Like when I would study for school, I would write it physically because that's how I would remember it. And so I just think there is a lot of intention using our hand to write something down.
Spelling.
Alakazam. That's one that I'm gonna have to like
dive into. Yeah, I think I watched like a 2.5 hour video one time just talking about origin of words, like the notion of spelling, writing. Yeah.
You watched an Eyes Wide Shut movie about spelling.
I consumed it in bits and pieces, but yeah.
That was probably the first thing you actually ever taught me, was always read the article, not just the headline.
Yeah, read the bottom of the article.
Yeah, that's the thing. Not even the first paragraph. Like, read the last
paragraph. Because they always do that, where it's like they make a headline and then they support the idea of the headline, and then in the bottom they put in there, basically, this was all made up and just our opinion, but this really could happen. You know.
I know.
And every time I'm just like,
because they know a lot of people are too lazy to actually read it.
It's not even lazy. We're programmed. We're programmed to read the headline and to move on. We're programmed to consume things in bites. Look at our social media. Look how people flick through in 1.5 seconds if it's not interesting enough. But you're still absorbing all that. So even if they didn't get to you with all the information there, you saw the headline. Oh, orange man bad. Oh, whatever, and you now absorb that and you're going, orange man bad, because you've passively taken that information into your subconscious.
Right.
And so that's why those headlines are so important. That's why it's like, the walls are closing in, testy, like greatest economy ever. Like they just hammer home those points. And then if you look at it factually, you go, how is this, right? Vanilla is the greatest ice cream ever created. And then you realize, oh, that's pretty subjective. And
I know. Well, I mean, and you've had conversations with people too, and they'll come to you with like hot button topics, and you just like ask them simple questions. And it starts
it unravels really quickly. Yeah.
And it's literally just like, how is that going to work? It's not even like you're wrong. It's like, oh, how is that going to work?
Yeah, because I've realized that we're all being programmed to be argumentative, right? And to battle. I think one of the greatest books, one of the best things my parents ever did for me, not even knowing it, was purchasing the Butter Battle book, Dr. Seuss. And for some reason, the more I live through life, the more I realize how profound that book was, and the concept that Dr. Seuss was trying to purvey with that, or show us with that book.
I should read it because I don't think I have.
It's very simple. It'll take you 5 minutes to read it. But
is it like a typical like Dr. Seuss? It's not like a chapter book.
No. Yeah. No. That's what I'm saying. And it's immensely profound. In essence, you have people that are warring and warring and technology and outdoing each other, and they're arguing over which side of the bread should be buttered. They're taking a position that this is the wrong side and this is the right side, and it's both one piece of bread. They're arguing what the right they're arguing what the right and the wrong side is in the way for the bread to be buttered. It's like, it's a piece of bread. It's getting buttered. It doesn't matter whether it's on your perspective of the left or the right side. Depending on who you are, you're arguing over something that is subjective just to your view. Whereas if you change your view, you're in complete agreement that you both want butter on your bread. That's the idea. And then they keep escalating like war and tension and trying to outdo each other, and eventually leading to like their own demise by something that they're arguing over this concept. And I feel like that's how the concepts keep going for us, is we become divided over the concept, but at the end of the day, people really want the same thing, but they're arguing over how you get there. And what they're getting lost in is that you're arguing over how to get there when everyone really does want to get there. They want a buttered piece of bread.
But
it doesn't matter whether it's on top or on bottom.
Doesn't really matter.
You both want a buttered piece of bread, and you can have that without blowing each other up.
At the end of the day.
That's the message.
That is.
You're just operating off of the information that gets fed to you. That's someone paid for you to see.
That's why I try, when people have such strong differing opinions, like, you really should try and understand where they're coming from. Right. And that's why I have such a big issue with when people are so quick to be like, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to cut you out of my life. Certain things I understand probably warrant that. But like other things, I was just like, I think that's a really dangerous place to be if you all agree and think the exact same way.
Yeah. 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 And that makes it also a less interesting world. So I understand that. We need people that want to do things that I am not interested in, because it makes the world more interesting. It does make it a better place. But then there also has to be agreement on some stuff, in my opinion, where we feel like this shouldn't exist, right? We shouldn't be catapulting, kittens into the
I
ocean.
didn't know where you were going.
Well, I was going to go into some other stuff, but then I realized it might be controversial for some people, because there could be people right now who are like, I love catapulting kittens into the ocean. It's like there are some lines that I think as a society we should all agree not to cross and not to be involved in. And some of those things are happening, and I'm just like, that's a tough world to live in. So I understand people have the perspective about some other things that I feel are minor, right?
Yeah, like the buttered bread, I guess, is like at the end of the day. And then also just be willing to have, and we go back to this point with this podcast all the time, being willing to have conversation. I guess it's more so the S&D podcast, but being willing to just have conversations with anybody.
Yeah.
Not like scholars or the top of their class or whatever. It's just like everybody has something to learn and to teach everybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, getting the message. I mean, world experience, and it's how the thing I realize, we value what someone says based on how we value that person, and how we value that person is based on a system that we're using that we all agree is messed up. That there's a lot of problems with our system and the way we do things, yet we still only value the opinions of the people who have been the most successful in the system that we don't like. It's like, that makes my head hurt, right? I was like, why are you listening to this person? You don't like the way the system is, but yet you reference their opinion as if this is the way to do something, when they're the most successful person in the system that you don't like.
Right.
That you think is morally repugnant or wrong or broken. And then they're the cheerleader for your camp in that system. And you're like, yeah, we got to do it. It's like, how can you not see the oxymoron in there, or the contradictory, I guess.
But you have to find people who are willing to have those conversations. I almost think people are kind of craving those conversations again.
Well, I've always said, like, whoever ends up in the driver's seat with whatever movement needs to be cautious, because the harder you push that pendulum away from the status quo of where most people are comfortable, you may get momentum to push it to an extreme. But understand, like we're seeing now, you pushed it to an extreme, and then you're going to have it crescendo back and then carry you further back than where you were.
Just when you were talking about that, and I was thinking about Eyes Wide Shut, I almost think maybe people swing things so far where it's just like at the time it's like crazy, but then now, like in the 90s, I bet people thought a party like that would be so outlandish, so impossible, like would not happen.
Total story.
Today, with all that we know, it is actually it could be actually plausible.
It's like a how-to guide.
Exactly.
Well, we talked about the movie as if it's like the children's version of what goes on in upper echelon stuff.
Exactly. And we don't exactly know what the wealthy family is doing in real life.
And now, to be fair, because you see that, it's like this immediate association that all this is going on. There are probably all kinds of people who do nothing like that are insanely wealthy and working in the scenes to improve everyone's life. There's just as much of that going on. It's not like every single person who makes it up there is like rubbing their hands together and brutalizing people. It's just that there are enough of them who do it with so much control. And it's like the boogeyman story. And maybe it's a way for us to justify our actions, right?
Maybe.
All the inhumane and the terrible things that we allow or we passively allow to occur in this world, we got to create a boogeyman to justify it.
No, it's true. And to be honest, like, I still live in a state that there is more good than bad. I honestly believe that these types of parties is such a small percentage. I have to believe that, because it's like, if it was a huge percentage, wouldn't we be seeing it all over the place all the time?
I think that's the way everything goes, though. Like, everything that's the outlier is so interesting to us that's the thing we want to talk about. And with social media, then your feed becomes filled with the outliers of the things that you dislike the most and the things that you love the most. So you're getting these here's this huge spectrum and here's the bell curve and you're getting the ends of it. And then that becomes the world to you and you're disengaging from the other 70% of the bell curve.
Right. It is funny how like you do see the good and the bad on your algorithm all the time. Why?
Because it's the most engaging.
It is the most engaging. I also think too, it's like I see all these times like on Twitter or whatever, where somebody's like, why is this on my feed? I hate this. And then somebody below it will be like, well, since you commented on it, it's gonna do you even more.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, it is true. Like we almost can't help ourselves with stuff that we hate. Like you almost like gravitate towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you hate it, you can't stop. It's like a car accident. You can't stop looking at it.
Right. I got my dirty shirt. I love this shirt though. It's long sleeves, like kind of warmer. It's great
comfy.
Yeah, it's great to wear in the winter. But I got like a coffee stain in the middle of it, and
those are the best kind.
Yeah,
it's
I just
worn.
throw it on. Yeah, right?
It's like
I know. I keep looking at our videos. I'm like, I'm what did I say? Not de-dressing, but I'm like downgrading my.
You're getting comfortable.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting comfortable. Eventually, I'm just going to be walking in here in like a spaghetti stained wife beater and some torn up shorts. Right? I won't even, my hair will be disheveled. It'll be like the regression of me. You'll just see this regression.
Yeah, so I will say I'm feeling really optimistic. I feel really good when I'm in here.
Yeah, it is. It's like a space to do it. It feels like it's our space.
Well, that's
where before we were operating out of kind of wherever we could based on convenience.
We'd be getting kicked out.
Yeah.
All of the time.
Yeah. Now we're totally off topic and off script of what we said we were going to talk about. And so anyone who's still in this point is probably like, how did he let her get derailed to where they're having a conversation that has nothing to do about what they introduced they were going to finish talking about when he sat down, right? I was like, okay, the eyes wide shut wrap up, and we're talking about, but this is us. But this is also our video that we're doing. We're basically doing this for ourselves to go through this process to learn, and this is the audience that we want to build. People that want to. People that identify with us, people that are interested in hearing our opinions or find us entertaining, like people that would want to be friends with us, basically.
Like I said, everybody enters your life at the time that you need them to.
Yeah. Well, you start building a world you probably, just like with social media, where we build an echo chamber that's a reflection of our personal thoughts and opinions about things because we like it, so we interact with it, or we don't like it, so we interact with it. So then inversely, it's probably very symptomatic of what we do with our life.
Well, and you said this point too the other day where you were talking about our other job and you were just like, I want to create a workplace that I want to be at. And you realize that it starts with you.
Yeah.
And then that's when it kind of like dawned on me where it's just like, it really does start with you.
I'd like to call it poisoning the well. Yep. Spiking the punch, poisoning the well. And it's like when you realize that you have that type of control, then you also actualize that you're the one who's holding your experience back. Okay,
so we did a sound bath recently, and I always have very profound experiences when I do sound baths. I don't know what it is about it, but I just do. And I think like this last one, I realized like your biggest enemy is really yourself. The person getting in your way is you. Do you have other people making life hard? Of course.
Yeah.
Do you have other people who maybe like are putting themselves in your way? Yeah. But I think you really are at the end of the day the person who is in your, at least for me and like a lot of this stuff, like I'm in my own way and I need to just stop. How do you do that? It's easier said than done, but
yeah, well, the people who figure it out are the people who are happy in pursuing their career and living their joy, right? And the people who aren't are the people who are talking about how to do it. So talk to the people who are doing that stuff. The person who's just creating little pottery things and selling them on Etsy and as happy as can be, like that's who you need to.
That's the realization that I've come to is I don't think that before I was like, I need 100 million subscribers. I don't think I need that many. I think that we just need, I don't want to throw out a number.
I'll start with like 10. Let's go to 10. Then we'll go 20, 15.
Because I don't want to limit us.
Be greedy. Yeah, let's not put any limits on it.
But then yeah, and then I'd like totally derail us. I don't even know how this conversation.
Eyes wide shut. So yeah, at the end of the day, there's a lot of themes in the movie, and it all goes around sexuality. It seems a big, heavy part of it, and society's perception of those actions, and people going through the maturation process of dealing with those experiences and making those choices.
I think it was really ahead of its time, and I think that it's more relevant today than it probably was 20 some odd years ago.
It's part of that disclosure, like we talked about before with the mosaic idea. Is that movie a mosaic of what was to come in the future and the conversations that were to be had in the future, and
Exactly.
more of the disclosures of what were happening in the future. I mean, a guy trafficking his teenage daughter in the movie was like a small clip of it, but for the time period that I grew up, that's something that people were like, "Pfft." Now we understand there's people coming across the border that you have 5-year-olds with Plan B pills on them because of what their people are expecting to happen to them during that journey and trip. So now you're going to have this huge jump. By the way, you're going to have all these people who've experienced these things that are now going to be interacting with your society as well. And how they deal with that and how that comes to fruition 10, 15 years down the road for them. What we're dealing with. That's always the thing. It's like these long-term effects, something longitudinal as far as a study, but long-term effects and how it affects society as a whole, what we allow to happen, right?
I think that's the bigger thing is what we have allowed to happen and what we're allowing to happen right now.
Yeah, you're not even paying for it. People are like, oh well, this about this thing or this about that thing. It's like we're not even paying for the decisions we've made yet. We're going to pay. My kids will pay for it, right? That's who's going to pay that bill. And I don't only mean from a financial means. Like if you look at it that way, that makes sense as well. But I mean from a societal means, like how long it takes for these things to actually have an impact and take root in places.
We could argue that the housing crisis that's going on right now is us paying the bill from
our
parents.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not
Boomers.
the same. So I think we see that. I don't know. I did. That was one of those movies that was really disturbing to me, but it's one of those things that I feel like I need to rewatch to even internalize it even more. I mean, I guess I don't know if I need to rewatch it.
Yeah. You just want to see all the TNA. Actually, there was so much of it in the way it was portrayed. It wasn't like you watch something like that and you're like, oh, kind of feeling it or whatever. When I was watching that movie, I was like, man, this is turning me off to, right?
Yeah.
For me, it was like these acts were being simulated and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is gross. I was like, this is gross. And it's weird because like I could view that stuff in another way and it would be okay. But the way that movie was put together and the way the imagery and the backstory behind it, and you're along for that ride. I was just like, I wanted to get out of that ceremony, like when they were doing that.
Me too.
I wanted to get out of that scene, right?
Because that's why I think I felt like it dragged on forever.
Yeah.
It probably really didn't, but it felt like it did.
Right.
And so
when she first takes it, I was like, you should leave. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's leave. That's where I was in my head. I was like, yeah, let's leave. Hit the door, Tom. Do your run.
But yeah, it was really it was, and I think that that's what the director was trying to convey. Like, I don't think it was supposed to be a comfortable movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't supposed to be like a sexual, like, turn you on type of movie. It was supposed to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think he did a good job. I am curious about mysterious surroundings of his death, but I haven't dived deep enough into that.
He was a conspiracy guy. Kubrick was.
I need to look into what other movies he's done.
He's done some wild ones.
Because
some ones that you don't know that he did that are big, prolific, like going down rabbit hole ones.
we should just do a series of all the movies that he's directed. Yeah. But I really don't know. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to give this. That's why I was saying earlier. It's hard for me to give this movie a rating because it did make me feel so uncomfortable. But it was really well done at the same time.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's an important piece. I think it was an important piece for our society and a film that's still talked about. So it's one of the better movies that's been created.
Rewatching it, I don't know. It really was with like different eyes, different.
Seems way more relevant.
That's the thing. It was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Again, I just keep going back to this idea that it was a soft disclosure piece of the direction society was heading and having these conversations that people didn't want to have conversations about, like a way to crack open the door, like the PG version of the X-rated underworld of what's going on in our world.
So I wonder, like, I actually am curious now that we've like had this conversation, what other people have done on this, like on YouTube, and kind of like what their talking points were.
There's some significant rabbit holes that people have gone down with this.
Like, I didn't want to be like biased coming into this. I just wanted to say what I saw and felt, but I am kind of curious to see what other people kind of have to think about it now.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely going to want to go into the whole Kubrick conspiracy as far as the additional extended cut in his original version of the film that he was trying to get produced.
Well,
I know that ceremony scene itself was a big deal. Like the fact that that was released to theaters was a big deal.
I'm surprised they allowed that.
Yeah.
Because it was obvious that it was of significance of something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of symbolism in there that I don't think I even understand a lot of it. Is there a way to see the unedited version at all?
I don't know. I mean, maybe if we scour the internet, we could find people who claim to have it.
But then again, I don't know if we want that big of a red flag on us.
I'm already red flagged as it can be. I'm on all kinds of stuff. If there is a system, I have to be on it. If I'm not, I'm disappointed in you guys. But it's worthwhile. I would say this, as far as a rating and a wrap up, is it is a societal piece. It is a piece, a reflection of our society, and it is a peek into the idea of what's going on as far as in people's minds and how they deal with their sexuality and how they deal with that in relation to society and how they deal with it in relation to keeping their relationships, right? The guy was in the beginning, the guy was sleeping with that one woman and she OD'd or whatever at the party that his wife was at. And he tells the guy, like, don't say anything to anyone about this, like, don't tell my wife I was up here banging this lady in the bathroom. So, and at his house, at his party, right? So it touches on all that stuff. And then the undertones of the potentially it seemed like he was experimental in college or whatever, right? With that piano player. That's the vibe I got. So and I think that's why they had that scene where he got accosted about, right?
Because what was the point of that?
Yeah. Why would those guys call him names and insinuate that he was sleeping with men and stuff like that?
Had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, but if you take it from the perspective that he was revisiting in his mind maybe some experience with that piano player, then it's like, oh, okay, that's what they were hinting at, right, by doing that.
Especially if they were talking that closely with each other, like you were.
The first time, yeah, if you go back and watch that scene, I was uncomfortable. Like I thought they were getting ready to like go in for they were like at that pre-kiss phase, right? There's that comfortable distance, and then it's like the real comfortable distance, and then it's like you're getting towards right. Yeah,
I'm amazed that it's actually still on like major streaming platforms. Like they haven't taken it down or stifled it or anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there though that's like that, so
that's probably true.
There is,
but it was good.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for this evening. Thanks for those of you who made it all the way through this. I don't know how we're going to edit it down and see what it looks like, but we shot this for a while.